Ram Stadium, the backdrop behind us, one of 3 venues coming this Friday night for high school football region championships featuring our area teams. I'm Ben Spicer, joined alongside James Collier. You are watching a Kool TV preview segment as we're going to take a dive in and take a look at those 3 aforementioned teams. Of course, Raceland, the team behind us right now practicing. Coach Salmon's looking to win a region championship. They've had the last 2 games at home. They've got the region championship at home, and the Rams have been dominant so far. What's been working for Raceland here through 2 rounds of the playoffs?
The biggest thing, I think, if you talk to anybody with around Raceland, the word that you're going to hear is depth. They are very deep on both sides of the football. And the mantra that you've heard around Raceland, 48 minutes, that's really been the key this year. You see some teams that maybe stick around with the Rams for a quarter, 2 quarters, even at that, even 3 quarters with Greenup County. But that 4th quarter, 48 minutes of just those big linemen leaning on you, and just those body blows that they talk about. That's one of the keys that Mike Sammons talks about, those body blows. And I think that's really been the big difference this year is how deep they've been and the level of physicality that they've been bringing to it. When we've traveled on the road this year, there's been many times that the PA announcer says, tackled by a host of Rams, because there's so many people around the football. And that's one of the big things they've done so well this year. Hawk to the football and keeping everybody super fresh.
And when you look at their offense, I think one thing that separates them from a lot of teams in Class 1A, and you look at the top teams in 1A, Raceland, Pikeville, a lot of people think they'll be meeting up in Lexington here in a couple weeks. Both of those teams are balanced. And Raceland, obviously, it all starts with Logan Lundy, but they have a stable of running backs to go alongside him and some guys out on the edges that can make plays.
Without a doubt. I mean, it starts with Logan Lundy. He's over 2,000 yards. The first time since 2016 a Rams quarterback has thrown for over 2,000 yards. Last time that was Nathaniel Davidson. He threw for over 3,000. Lundy, in his only 2nd season, he's just a few yards away from 4,000 in his career. 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions this season. He's been very efficient with the football. And like you said, he's got those weapons. One of those big weapons that's really come on the second half of the season has been Mason Likens. Likens has been a guy that's worked on the boundary side, and he and Lundy have that deep ball that's been working. But he's got so many other guys he's go to. Connor Hughes, a kid that I've always said he's the only guy that I can see that can move forward, go sideways, and never lose any speed whatsoever. I don't know how many times I've talked about right here at the 35-yard line, a jump cut by Hughes that goes 60 yards for a touchdown. Parker Fannin is a kid that has really gotten more physical this year. He works the deep ball, but he's been those crossing routes too, and he's got really good hands around the middle. Doesn't care to take those big blows as you get from a linebacker. Kind of a Wes Welker type of guy, if you would think about. You throw that in there. Landon Newman went down for a few games with an injury. He pops back looking like he never lost a step. And then they bring in the big tight end this year, Braden Webb. And they've not gone to him a lot, but when they have, a lot of times it's been wide open because everybody is selling out to all those other weapons that you're looking for, and Webb just slips out. Had a 2-point conversion last week.
You mentioned Braden Webb. That just adds another element to the offense that you have to worry about if you're an opposing defensive coordinator. I know you threw Wes Welker in there. You had to get your Patriots guy in there. I've got my Lions sweatshirt on. We don't know anything about playoff football.
Nothing at all.
So, yeah, that's fitting. But, this time of year, games are won and lost in the trenches, especially the deeper you go. And, not to look too far ahead, but if you're going to win the state championship with Raceland, I think it starts up front. But the Rams are well equipped on the offensive and defensive line.
Well, it all starts with the offensive line. Drew Burke sets them down, and he's got the guys around him that they are so balanced. Levi Riley, Clay Coldiron, Ben Taylor has been working up there some. Burrows. You've got everybody knows their role. And that's the biggest thing is when guys know what their role is, they know what they have to do in that moment's notice. The biggest thing of it, too, they got 4 running backs at any possible time that can grab that football and take off. Noah Wallace leads the team just under 600 yards this season. He got over 2,000 yards for his career last week. And it was funny, I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and I said, do you realize you have about half the number of carries you had last season? He goes, no, I didn't. There's been a couple of times this year to where one week the leading rusher didn't even touch the football the next week. Isaac Browning, the leading rusher against Ashland, they play Russell. We never touched the football. You've had Noah Wallace that coming into the playoffs in that first week against Nicholas County. He never carried that night. He caught a touchdown pass, but he didn't carry the football. Wow. EKC Defensive Player of the Year. He really plays downhill from the defensive side of him, from that safety position. But there's other guys that just step in there, and it's kind of a nameless class, if you will. With joining him, you've got Jules Farrell. Farrell has really gotten more north and south this year, less east and west, but he still has that elusiveness, especially if he gets into space. Browning has been a very nice addition to the team, a punishing back that runs well behind his pads for a small guy, but he delivers a punishing blow. And add Jackson Heighton in there, that's kind of been a Rex Burkhead, if you will. I'm going to throw another Patriots Rex in there. And then don't forget, you've got the ability of Logan Lundy to pull it down and run it. And don't forget, they go in the Wild Ram. That's Connor Hughes with the football. So 6 running backs potential that can do stuff with everything that they're doing. And you put, as we talked about, Braden Webb, they'll run him as an H-back at times. And almost as an attached tight end, that's almost like a 6th offensive lineman.
You mentioned all the weapons that Raceland has. Hazard has several weapons on their end as well. Of course, they go 8-4 on the season. But their main guy is number 20 in the program, Max Johnson. Nearly 1,700 yards on the season, 18 touchdowns. He's also the team's leading receiver, 34 catches, 534 yards. And then he plays a little defense as well, 88 tackles and 8 interceptions on defense for number 20. They're led at quarterback by Max Pelfrey, 21 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions on the season. Landon Smith, number 13, Javon White, number 4, some other names to know. This team is aggressive in the secondary. They forced 16 interceptions on the season. So what do you think Hazard maybe needs to do here on the road coming into what's going to be a rockin' Ram stadium to try and come out here on top?
Well, sorry for the pun, but they're going to have a max effort. Okay, Max Pelfrey, Max Johnson, the quarterback, the running back combo there, they have to be on their game without a doubt. The question is, you look at one of the top rushers in Class Single A and probably high in the states. I haven't looked at his state records or where he stands in the statistical yet, but I know where he stands in the Class A, and it's at the tops. So when you look at that, that's another challenge for the Rams, who they tout the best rushing defense, not in Class Single A, one of the best in the state. I've watched them week in and week out. You'll have a running back roll in that's got these super numbers, and the Rams squash it. It started at Betsy Lane when they went in against the Music Kid. He was over 200 yards a game, 8 carries, 3 yards. So it's kind of gone week after week that they've really shut down, and as they like to say, they force a team to play left-handed. I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to force Max Pelfrey, the sophomore, to have to beat them. They're going to take away Max Johnson, because the thing is, like you pointed out there, when you take away the rushing attack of Johnson and you take away his ability to get in space in the passing attack, now you're forcing Hazard to kind of play a little bit out of its comfort zone. This is not a team that's going to come in here and try to put 50 points up on the scoreboard. They're not equipped to do that. They are more of that grinded out 20 to 30 point type of game. That's where they're setting. They've been very solid so far. 34-6 win over Pineville. It was 29-0 last week over Williamsburg. So they've taken care of business in the first 2 rounds. Now the next step. And I think the biggest thing that jumped out at me as I started my preparation earlier this week, depth. The numbers are nowhere comparable of what you're going to see on the Rams sideline. And a lot of the guys, they're going to be going both ways.
Okay, now moving on to 3A. These two teams did have a common opponent in Ashland. Of course, Hazard knocked off Ashland as well. That kind of sparked a winning streak for the Tomcats. We'll talk about their next opponent coming up here soon. But we'll stick in their district for now and look at Greenup County, who is coming off a 1-9 season a year ago. Now they find
winless
themselves
on the field, by the way.
Yeah, right. They just had the COVID win. So now they find themselves in the region championship, and what a turnaround it's been for the Musketeers.
Without a doubt. And, I was around Zach Moore several years when I was still there at Greenup, and, I talked with him last year. Coming into the season, I said, what's the biggest thing that you're concerned about? He said, we have no offensive returners whatsoever that's played any varsity minutes whatsoever. When you graduate every skill player that you've got on the field, it certainly makes things a challenge. We watched guys last year that had to go through that learning phase. One of those being the freshman quarterback of Tyson Salmons. What a difference a year has made with what he's been able to do. Tyson has not only grown, he's gained the confidence as a leader for that team. And more importantly, he's shown that he can not only beat you with just his legs, but he can throw it as well if he needs to.
Yeah, they definitely have a balanced attack. I think the emergence of Ike Henderson is worth mentioning as well. He's played very well in Greenup County's 2 playoff wins, the first round coming over Pike County Central and last week against Lawrence County. Obviously, they get the chance to have a rematch with the Royals. The regular season finale went down to the wire. So what maybe needs to be different for Greenup County this time around?
Well, Coach Moore said after the game he needed about 50 more seconds in that ball game up in Mason County. I talked with him this past Saturday on the show, and he said, one thing that was different in that game, they did not run Tyson Salmons till the fourth quarter. That game was not a game that they needed at that point. Now it is a game. In that game when they played, Salmons only carried the ball 9 times, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw 25 times that night, completed 15 of those, but he was intercepted twice. The question becomes is, how many times does he have to carry the football? And if that means 25 times tomorrow night, that's what we'll see. You're going to see a healthy collection of Tyson Salmons, Ike Henderson controlling that rushing attack for Greenup. And the more important thing, trying to keep the football away from Mason County in that offense. Mason
County Royals are 12-0 on the season. This looks like a game that could come down to the battle of the rushing quarterbacks. You look at the Royals side of things, Keyshawn Thomas, no stranger to that ground game. He's also had some success through the air throughout the year. Some notable players for Mason County, of course, Thomas, the quarterback. He had a big game the first time these two teams got together. 3 total touchdowns on the season, 19 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 11 rushing touchdowns. And then I like this guy, number 20.
I figured you were going to go with,
Sanders.
not to be known with Barry Sanders. He may need a Barry Sanders type atmosphere to get through. But Sanders on the season, he's a guy that he's just south of 1,000 yards, and he is a nice compliment there to Thomas. But I still think this is Thomas's game. He's going to have to control, more importantly, keep Greenup at bay with that defense. I think on the defensive side of the things, one of the numbers that you have to call is Carson Wireman. He's been playing lights out here recently. He had a big game against Lawrence County. He's kind of that quarterback, if you will, that can kind of set in the middle there. But he's a guy that I think leads this Musketeers defense against, again, the second kind of go around with his team.
Some other Mason County players that we definitely have to mention. Number 5, Terrell Henry.
Yeah, 2 interceptions in that win.
7 on the season. Then on the offensive side, 9 receiving touchdowns. Isaac Marshall also has 7 for Mason County. So that's another interesting game. Greenup County traveling down to Maysville, looking to come out on top as region champion after going 1-9 a year ago. Well, that's the story of the season to me.
Without a doubt. And I think one of the things, too, another key player that I think we got to talk about for Greenup County is Brady Howard. Howard was injured midway through the season with a collarbone, missed several games, did return, saw limited action when they played at Mason County. But he's a guy that not only on the receiving side, but on the return game, the kick return, punt return, he's explosive. And when you have a guy that every time the football touches his hand, it's a chance of going to the end zone, that changes the way things sets up. I like last week whenever they went to Lawrence County, I spotted Greenup the win on my picks because of Brady Howard and the explosives that I thought he brought to that side of things. Now, I didn't expect it to be 28-7, but either way, I think Howard is a game changer because he brings that element to the return game that you need to set up those nice field positions, not get stuck deep in your own zone, and I like what he does on the offensive side of things.
I was really impressed with Jace Griffith last week. I think he ended up tallying 10 total tackles for Greenup County. Then obviously Mason Salmon's very imperative to that defense's success too. One more area team that we want to get to before we close things out as Ashland goes down south almost to the Tennessee border where they'll be taking on Bell County, of course a team who's had a lot of success over the years to say the least. It's a matchup for the Tomcats with a first-year head coach in Chad Tackett. They've found themselves, though, as the season has winded on. You got to see them early on in the year against Raceland. What's different about this team now compared to then?
Well, one thing I will say is I had them week 1 against Raceland, and then I had them again middle part of the season against Elizabethtown. And that's when they started this winning streak that they're on. And the thing that I think that really plays out from what you see from the Tomcats now as compared to week 1, they're finding their identity. A lot of new faces out there, a lot of youthful guys out there, and they're starting to understand the philosophy. Coach Tackett has got his system working the way that it wants to. And some of those youthful guys are figuring, okay, I may be a sophomore, but I'm not a sophomore anymore. I'm 11 games deep now as a sophomore. But LeBryant Strader has been so impressed with what he has done. He's not a guy that has done anything to cause Ashland to lose. He is a big-bodied kid. He's very tough to tackle, works in the running game when he needs to, but he has an explosive arm as well. He can go down the field. When you've got playmakers like a Brandon Houston that can get vertical and you get the football into his hands, you find a way to keep him involved in the work, and they have made a nice combination between the hookup and in the passing game. But then you've got a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield. Braxton Jennings, who's had a phenomenal year as a sophomore. Tay Thomas has worked in there with him. They've kind of been the 1-2 punch. And then, like I said, don't forget about having Strader be able to run the ball. And then they put Houston in motion on some of those jet sweeps. And I know when I talked with Coach Tackett in the pregame, in the preseason, I should say, I said, what do you look at? And he said, we'll find a way to get Houston as many touches as we possibly can. When you have an athlete, that's what they classify him. They don't classify him as a wide receiver. They don't classify him as a running back. They classify him as an athlete because he brings so much to the table. The thing that I really like about Ashland, and this was going back to that Elizabethtown game, how well they stopped the run. E-Town came in with a good running attack, and Ashland does a great job of hawking to the football. They're going to have a tough test going up against one of the top running backs in the state against Bell County's. But I like the way they go. I don't expect this to be a blowout by any means. Did I pick Ashland? No, I had Bell County because it's a long road trip, and I like the explosiveness that their running back possesses. But I expect Ashland to keep this one close and make it a very, very comparable matchup that they're going to see for what we're going to see the upslope of Ashland for years to come.
Bell County is 10-2 on the season. They are led by number 4 Daniel Thomas, so look out for him, Tomcats fans. Almost 2,200 yards on the season and 29 rushing touchdowns. He's the state's leading rusher on the season. We will actually have highlights of Ashland and Bell County for you at the conclusion of that game on Kool TV. And while you're here, go ahead and make sure to like this video. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new releases. And also drop us a comment. Let us know who you think is going to win the region championships on Friday night. For James Collier, I'm Ben Spicer. Thanks for watching another segment here on Kool TV.